Rabbi Tatz very kindly agreed to come and speak for us. And this morning's topic is mystical dimensions of Pesach. So something deep to get our brains woke up this morning. We've had the caffeine injection, and now Rabbi Tatz, I think they're ready. They will have the warm up. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, thanks to Rabbi and Mr. Stepsky for this chance to study a bit before Pesach. Thanks to Miriam for running my life very efficiently. Stepsky asked me to talk about Pesach at an advanced level. So maybe let's think about something deeper, a mystical level I was asked to speak about. So I'm not sure Sunday morning early is the time to get into that gear, but let's see if we can try. Know that the Zohar, the great Kabbalistic source work, and many other sources spinning off from that say that the exile in Egypt was the exile of speech. The exile of speech. That's called Galut Hadibur. That speech was in exile. Speech was in exile, captured, imprisoned in Egypt. Right? Speaking could not take place. That is what it says. So let's maybe think a little bit about what this means in depth. After all, I was asked to speak about something in Kabbalah. So the Zohar is certainly Kabbalah. What is the meaning of the speech being exiled, and what does it mean? Let's try to bring it down into understanding for us on a more practical level as well. Before we begin this subject, why am I doing all the thinking? Let me challenge you. I would like you to give me a proof that in Egypt speech was exiled. Did you start already? You want me to give an introduction? Speech in exile, right? In case the recording didn't pick it up. In Egypt, it was Galut Hadibur. Speech was exiled, and speaking could not take place. Give me a proof that that's the case. I will not continue until you come up with it. Give me at least one proof that Egypt was a place where speech was constrained, exiled. Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses, you see, I see the ladies are the black belts. That's fine. No, we can take it. You see that Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't speak, right? Moshe could not speak. He was the Redeemer. Very strange. In the Drashas Haran, famous series of essays from the Ran, he points out how strange that is. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, was perfect. He was supernatural, superhuman in his gifts. He was created as literally superhuman person, and he was the only prophet who ever reached into the world of prophecy completely. That means he was completely detached from the material. Unlike other prophets, he could speak to Hashem face to face at any time. He didn't have to wait to be spoken to. He completely left his body. He didn't see through a lens that has any color, right? He was completely in the spiritual world, and he had a speech defect. He couldn't speak. Very, very strange. But before we understand what that means, you see that there was a constriction of speech. He wasn't able to speak. The Maharal points out that after the Torah was given, he spoke normally, because it says, Eile advarim asher diber Moshe. These are the words that Moshe spoke. So after the Torah was given, somehow he was able to speak, and that obviously needs explanation. But the point is that that's a good place to begin. You see that Mitzrayim, Egypt, is the place where speech cannot take place. Now this needs understanding, obviously. What is speech? What is the exile of speech? Why is Egypt that? Why is Pesach the time of liberation of speech? So you gave me a very nice proof that in Egypt there was constriction of speech. Give me a proof that Pesach is a liberation of speech. Somebody else, don't let it do all the work. Pesach means the mouth talks. Pesach, the mouth talks. And how do we see that in practice on Pesach? What's the practical application of the mouth talking on Pesach? The Haggadah. Haggadah means telling the story. And the whole mitzvah of the Pesach Seder is to tell the story. Even the matzahs. have to be eaten with the story. They're part of the story, right? The matzahs, you notice that during the Pesach Seder, we cover the matzahs and uncover them, right? Most people just think that's arbitrary. When do you cover them? When do you uncover them? I'll tell you the secret. Watch carefully, you'll notice. Every time we are telling part of the story, the matzahs are uncovered. The story of the Exodus, the matzahs are uncovered. Because the telling us to be al matzot umrorim. You've got to eat the Pesach and talk about it on the matzah. So every time, when we're talking about other things like Hallel, praising Hashem, we cover the matzah. But when we're talking about the actual story, Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, then we are uncovering the matzahs, because the matzahs are part of the telling of the story. It's like a show and tell, where you are telling and showing at the same time, but they're definitely part of the same mitzvah. Anyone who has a sensitive ear will realize that when the Jews leave Egypt, they go into a place with a very strange name. The name of the place they go into is the Midbar. Midbar means speaking. Midbar, you know Hebrew, it's middaber. Midbar, it means middaber. Something to do with speaking, right? In fact, Midbar means a place of no speaking. In Hebrew, when you put a mem in front of a word, you take away from the thing, right? You say echad me'elef, 1 from 1,000, right? Or I'm going me London li Tel Aviv. I'm going from. When you go away from, the mem in Hebrew takes you away from the thing, right? Very beautiful. I can't resist telling you this. Yeah, this doesn't move you. There's no hope for you. In Hebrew, the word mashal, which means a metaphor. What does a metaphor or an analogy do? It takes you from something and leads you to something else. So it takes you from a thing from let's say something small that cannot be understood, in order to take you on a journey to the thing that you can understand. That's why you need it, right? The word mashal in Hebrew is mem, shin, lamed. Mem means where you're coming from. Shin is always the letter of action. And lamed in Hebrew, le, means the place you're going to. The word mashal is the 3 letters of where you came from, the action that you're doing now. Shin in Hebrew is always like, whenever you put a shin in front of a word in Hebrew, it means you do it. Like in modern Hebrew, they have shichpul, right, which means to make a copy, or shichnua, to convince somebody, right? These are all modern words, but with the shin in front of a word, right? Shi'abud, that means the enslavement, when you enslave somebody. Shin, did you know that? Did they teach you that at school in Israel? No? Get your money back. That's how Hebrew works. So mashal means from the place, the action you're doing on it, and the destination that you're going to. Anyway, the desert is a place that's mufka midibur. You're going out of Egypt into a place that says Betohu Yeleil Yishimon. In the desert is a wailing and an inarticulate sound. Not a place of speaking, it's a place of inarticulate sound. The Maharal says the desert is a place where there's no roads. What's unique about a desert is there's no road. Right? The desert is just any place you go is the road. Right? It's like the ocean. There's no landmarks in the desert. Any place, it's wide. There's no roads in the desert. Right? So they're going into a place that is wild. It's not like where there's mapped out pathway that you can walk. As you walk, you make the road. That is what's unique about a desert. The Maharal says, incidentally, that's why Arabs live in the desert. The Arabs, the Arabic, the site of the original Arabic nations was the desert, the Arabian desert, and that's because their philosophy, the Rambam explains that Arab philosophy is wherever you go is the journey. Wherever you go is what God wanted. Right? He calls it the kalam. The kalam is that whatever you do is different. That's why they can do anything, absolutely anything, be completely confident this is what God wants. Right? Very amazing thing to understand. Anyway, that's the desert. So the story of the Exodus from Egypt is the story of a redemption of dibur. It is where speech is not possible, and it is an exile of speech, and then it is a exit into a place which is also problematic from a speech point of view, and it's going towards Sinai, which is divine speech. Right? The Torah is God speaking, and that is the story of the redemption of talking. And therefore the mitzvah of Pesach is to tell Pesach, the Haggadah. The more you tell the story, the better. The central mitzvah is the talking. Right? The one other way you can see it is that the month of Nisan, I'm sure you're aware that according to Kabbalistic accounts, every month of the year corresponds to all the 12s. All the 12s in Torah correspond across the board, right? So there are 12 letters in the alphabet that are single letters, right? You know that the alphabet has 3 groups of letters. The Hebrew alphabet. This didn't teach you this either. Yeah. There's Aleph, Mem, and Shin, which are the main. That's called the imot, the mother letters. Aleph, Mem, and Shin. They are the 3 horizontal lines. And then you got 7 kfulot in Hebrew, 7 letters that are doubled. 7 letters in Hebrew that can take rafeh and dagesh. They can be soft or hard, like bet, vet, right? Bet, vet, Taf, Saf, right? Beged Kaporet, there's 7 letters. The Resh in a couple of places in Tanakh also has a dot. In some cases we no longer know how to pronounce those. For example, Beged Dalet. Dalet can have a dot or not. We pronounce it the same way. Yemenites have a different, they can pronounce very clearly the difference between a Taf with a dot, without a dot, right? But some of that's been lost. But nevertheless, there's 7 letters that have 2 forms. And then there are 12 letters that are called Pshutot. There are 12 letters in Hebrew that have got they don't have 2 versions, they have only one, right? And the first of those is a Hey. Hey, right? Aleph is one of the mother letters. Bet, Gimel, Dalet, or Dagush, they have a dot. The first simple letter in Hebrew corresponds to the first month. The first single letter in the alphabet, which is the first of the 12 singles, which is Hey, corresponds to the first month of the year, which is Nisan, right? So Nisan, the first month, corresponds to the first of 12 parts of the body, 12 faculties of the body, 12 letters in the alphabet, 12 months in the year, 12 tribes. So these are all corresponding. The Hey, what's unique about a Hey? Hey is the letter that corresponds to Nisan, and Hey is the first letter of speech. Hey. Why? Because whenever you begin speaking, the first thing that comes out is, before you even vocalize, right? The breath that comes out of the mouth is a Hey. That's why it's the origin of all expression. The Torah says, Eile toldos hashamayim va'aretz, these are the generations of the heaven and earth, behi bar am, in their being created. Behi bar am. On that, the Chazal say, Behei Bra'am. If you look in Behi Bra'am, the Hey is written small. So the word actually spells Behei Bra'am. With 5, he created them. Hashem created the world with 5, but it also means he created the world with a Hey. The first thing that comes out in speech, which is Hashem's method of creation, Hashem spoke the world into existence, the first thing that comes out in expression is the Hey. Behei Bra'am. He created the world with a Hey. That's the speech beginning, right? That's the sound of the beginning of speech is a Hey. Hey in Hebrew also means to take and do, like Hey lachem zera. Here you are. Take the seed and go and plant it, right? That's what Yosef said to the people of Mitzrayim as it happens. Anyway, so the letter Hey is the first of the 12, and it is the letter of Nisan. The tribe of Nisan, which is the tribe that corresponds to Nisan? Which of the 12 tribes? Take a guess. Which do you think is the first of the tribes? You only got 2 options. Huh? Yehuda, yeah. Yehuda, although he's not the firstborn, he's the leader. When the Jewish people exit Egypt, he's the one who goes ahead into the ocean and declares his connection with Hashem, even though the ocean hasn't split yet. It's Yehuda. So he's the month of Nisan. The sheep is the animal, the zodiac, that I'm not going to go into that now. The sheep is an animal that passively follows. Lechtech acharai bamidbar, you followed me into the desert. Why the sheep is a following animal, and yet it is the month of origins, not following. This needs a deep explanation. It's not incidental that it's the zodiac of the month, and it's the animal that the Egyptians worshipped. Right? The animal that the Egyptians worshipped was the sheep, and it's our korban Pesach, which is a sacrifice of the sheep. Okay, there's a lot to say here, but let's try to narrow ourselves down to speaking. Which part of the body is the month of Nisan? Which organ, which limb in the body is the month of Nisan? Huh? No. The right leg. The right leg. When you begin walking, that's how you begin, right? So the journey begins with the right leg. That's always the here. When you step forward in Shemona Esrei, when you're about to start davening, you should step forward with the right foot first as you approach Hashem. When you step back, you use the left foot to show you're reluctant to leave. Right? When you step back from the Amidah, you step back with the left foot first to show you're reluctant to leave. It's the weaker foot. But when you approach something you want to approach, you put the right foot first. Right? The right foot is always the side of beginning of the journey. So the part of the body that corresponds to Nisan is the right leg. And the faculty of the body is speaking. Right? You have speaking, hearing, different faculties of the body, laughing, various other ones, but the first of them is speaking, and that's the point of origin. So let's talk a little bit about speech and why it was so constrained in Egypt. And hopefully we'll understand something deep. A moment's thought will show you that the human being is really a speaker, right? The human being is called a medaber. The world has 4 levels of creation. Yeah, you have what's called domem, that's the inanimate world. Higher than that is somech, that's the plant world. Higher than that is the chai, that's the animal world. And higher than that is the medaber, right? Medaber, the speaking being. Right? The speaking being. About that you have angels. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz used to say, above that you have a yeshiva bocher. And then he used to say, and above that you have a mere yeshiva bocher. Anyway, but the point is that there's a hierarchy of being, and man, woman, the human being is called a medaber. In fact, Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim, Hashem breathed soul of a living being into him, and the Targum says, Ruach mamalala. He put into him a speaking spirit. So what defines the human being is speaking. And Egypt is a place that does not want the human being to speak. So that's Galut HaDibur. Let's see if we can try and fathom this a little bit. First of all, speaking defines the human being. Let's understand why that is. The reason is that speaking means to give expression. Inwardly you are potential, inner potential. The most potent aspect of your potential we call thought, thinking, which is very powerful and very potent, but has no expression in the world. You were not brought to the world to think. I don't mean you shouldn't think. I mean you were brought to the world to express thought, to give birth to it, to take your thought and express it in the world. That's called dibur. The definition of dibur means taking something abstract that is not expressed in the world and expressing it. It doesn't have to only be with the mouth. The technical translation of the word dibur in Hebrew is hanhaga. Hanhaga, that means doing something intelligent that comes from plan and actually doing it, right? Dabar in Aramaic always means to take in place, right? Dabarinu, he took and placed him, right? It says Hashem took Adam Arishon and he placed him in the garden. Dabar means, right? Dabar echad lador means a leader of a generation. Or yadber amim tachtenu means to take nations and control them. One nation's plan controls another nation. Dibur means any translation of potential in the mind into action in the world. Speech with the mouth is just the most refined version where the only expression in the world is sound. But of course it could be anything. A gesture can speak very eloquently. Dance is a very eloquent expression of all of the soul, right? When King David danced in the street, his wife accused him of revealing his soul, right? She said, you showed everybody all that you are. Dance is, the Gemara says, you can see if someone's wise by the way they walk. So all that you do, and in fact, it's no accident that the thought is contained in the upper zone that's called the head, the action takes place in the lower zone called the body, and the connection between the two is the neck. The neck is the place that translates. Why do you have a neck? Can you walk around like this? Why were you created with a neck? What is the neck? What's the meaning of the neck? The neck is the organ. The function of the neck is to take the potential of the head and translate it into the body, right? That's why voice is formed in the neck. Why is your voice formed in your throat? Why? Why did Hashem have to build you that way? Right? If you're an engineer, would you put that in the front of the neck is the place where voice is formed. In fact, it's very interesting to know. You see what's happening. You've got the head. Speech comes through a narrow zone. Narrow, tight bottleneck. Right? This is called Mitzrayim. Meitzar Yam, the place that squeezes the 50th. 50 is always the Kabbalistic spiritual world. Meitzar Yam, Egypt squeezes it, doesn't want the speech to take place. And this is where the battle takes place. The battle. In this part of the body where the speech is formed in Kabbalah, this is called Moshe. If you look in Kabbalistic works, you'll see this part of the body is called Kohen Gadol or Moshe. What? Shechina medaberet mitoch grono shel Moshe. Moshe opens his mouth and the Shechina speaks. This part of the body is called Moshe. This is where speech takes place. Now the back of the neck is called Ha'oref. Right? Ha'oref means the back, the nape of the neck. In Kabbalah, when you want to see the dark side of something, you look at the back. That's called the Achoraim. The back is always the dark side, excretion, otherness, foreignness. The back, you can't recognize somebody. In Hebrew, the word achor, which means the back, is the same as acher, meaning a stranger. Right? No recognition. The face is the place of recognition, uniqueness. The back is the place of darkness and unrecognition. So the back, the front of the neck is kedusha. The back of the neck is tum'ah. Right? And that's why the back of the neck is ha'oref. If you spell it backwards to see the dark side, ha'oref spells paroi. Paro. Pharaoh. This is Moshe, this is Paro. You understand? That's the battle. Moshe opens his mouth, Hashem speaks. Paro says, me Hashem. No, he's got nothing to do. He's out of it. Yeah, we don't relate to him. This is the channel that opens Hashem in the world. This is the channel that blocks it. In Kabbalah books, I'm sure you're aware, this is called this is called the good das, and this is called the bad das. Right? This is the das that uses spirituality to block Hashem from the world and saying, it starts with me. So the neck is the place where that is squeezed. Right? That's the squeezing down. The neck, I'm sure your minds are racing ahead. Rabbi Stepsky told me you are the real black belts. So I'm sure your minds are racing ahead and you've thought through all the places where the Torah mentions a neck. And in every case you'll realize it's a place of connection between higher and lower worlds. For example, whenever the Torah uses the word neck metaphorically, it's speaking about the Beis HaMikdash, about the temple. Right? For example, it says in Shir HaShirim, Kemigdal Tzavarech. He's talking about the beauty of this woman. his beloved wife that he's married to, and he's talking about her beauty, and he talks about her bodily, physical beauty, and her neck, he talks about Kemigdal, your neck is beautiful like King David's tower. Right? What's that mean? Look in the Mefarshim. He's talking about the temple. It's a metaphor. In the metaphor, he's talking about his love, husband-wife love. But in the Nimshal, he's talking about our relationship with Hashem. And the place of our meeting is the temple. That's the place of meeting, and that is the place of connection. You see this so many times. For example, you want a picture? I'll smile. Let's get it over. Okay. You see that King David is the temple is the place of connection. When Yaakov and Yosef, when Yosef and Binyamin meet each other after long separation, they fell on each other's neck. Vayevk al tzavaro, he cried on his neck. He cried on his neck. Rashi says he was crying for the future destruction of the temple. How on earth does Rashi know what they were crying for? On his neck, cried on the neck. There's a tragedy connected with the neck. That's the Beis HaMikdash, right? So the neck is the place of connection. By the way, it's very interesting. If you think about the Beis HaMikdash, you will realize it is exactly the place of connection between the higher and the lower worlds. It's exactly the place. In the Beis HaMikdash, Hashem speaks. That's where the voice emanates from, between the two kruvim, right? So in the Beis HaMikdash is where speech is emanating. It is the place of connection of higher and lower worlds, and that is why it's called the neck of the world, right? That extension from higher to lower worlds, that is called the place of the neck, and that is the faculty of speaking. So what speaking does, here's the key. What speech is the connection between your spiritual being and your material being. Speech enables you to take your abstraction as in soul dimension and thought and bring it into expression in the world. That is what speaking does. If you can't speak, you know that dead people are called Yordei Duma, those who descend into silence. Right? That's what the Gemara says. They are longing to, can't express themselves. A dead person is a person who's fully conscious. But the sadness of death is that it's a silent world. They cannot, right? The Gemara in Sanhedrin says the angel that watches over dead people, his name is Duma. Duma is the angel that watches over the Gemara in Sanhedrin says all dead people keep appealing to the angel. They keep saying to him, when will the dawn break? When will Mashiach come? When will be released from the situation, right? And the Malach Duma says to them, he gives them a whole discussion between dead people and the Malach that watches over them. But the point I want to just mention is that Malach is called Duma. Duma is the one who is silent, right? Domem also it comes from that, right? Dom means to be silent. Duma, right? That is the world of silence. So the living world is the world of connection between spirit and body. That's the definition of life. And it's a world of expression. You can express yourself. That is speech. And therefore, Galus HaDibur, Egypt is the place where you can't express yourself. By the way, just as an aside, let's not forget the practical. This is why in Judaism, speech is so incredibly potent. Speech, right? The sins of speech are the worst ones. Could somebody close the windows? Is it possible? Thanks. Thank you. Speech, thank you, is the ultimate sins, right? Lashon Hara, for example. Lashon Hara, the Gemara says, is worse than murder, immorality, idolatry, right? So Lashon Hara, just say a few bad words about somebody. True words, right? And it's such a terrible thing. The reason is you're using speech for harm. And that is the definition of the human being. When you pervert that, you're perverting your essence in the world. By the way, it's very interesting. Lashon Hara is worse than lying. Right? The ultimate peak misuse of speech we call Lashon Hara. Why not lying? Why not lying? I'll tell you the reason. Because lying is not speaking. What do you do when you lie? You say something from your mouth that is not what is in your mind. It's false. Speech, the purpose of speech is to take what's inside and express it outside. That's called speaking. Lying is pretending to speak. It's from the lips out. Misafa v'lachutz. It's from the lips out, but it's not sharing what's in. It's using speech to deceive. Right? Speech is when you take something that is not revealed and you reveal it in the world. Lashon hara is much worse because you're using real speech for harm. Right? That's why it says, Hashem svatai, we say, Hashem svatai, we say, Elokai netzor l'shonim era, Hashem, guard my tongue from speaking Lashon hara, usvatai midaber, my lips from speaking lies. The lips are outer organs, they speak lies. The tongue's an inner organ, that speaks Lashon hara, right? Because it speaks truth. Lashon hara is when you say something true that harms. So the human being is a speaking being. When the Jewish people are imprisoned in Egypt, the human form is being held silent. That's what the slavery means. In practical terms, it means they're slaves, they've got to work. But in spiritual terms, it means there's a battle between which voice will speak in the world. And the Jewish people are being silenced. Right? That means that the voice of Kedusha in the world, the voice, that being in the world, which is called the Jewish people, who are meant to be the body that Hashem will speak through, that connection, Paro is doing anything. He's the Oref. He's the one who's to constrain it. This people should not be allowed to speak in the world, right? And therefore they are imprisoned in a way, they are held within silence. That's what the meaning of Mitzrayim is. It is the place of no ability to express ourselves as the tool, the medium that brings Kedusha into the world. So the redemption, of course, is in the month of speech. It is connecting with the miraculous world. Nisan means miraculous. That's what it is. And therefore the mitzvah is to use speech to bring Kedusha into the world, right? And therefore that is the mitzvah of the month. It is the talking, the Haggadah, the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. That what is it that you should tell? What should you use speech for? You should use the speech to reach into the spiritual world. I can't say it more clearly than this. The Rambam says that the mitzvah of the Seder is to talk about miracles. Amazing. It's an unbelievable Rambam. Look in the 7th chapter of Hilchos Chomotz Matzah. The Rambam says, here's his language. He says, mitzvat essay. It's a mitzvah's essay. It's a positive mitzvah shel Torah. This is his language. The first halacha. It's a positive mitzvah of the Torah. Lesaper, right? To tell. And then, what do you expect to come next? The story of the Exodus, right? He says like this: mitzvahs essay shel Torah. Lesaper benissim v'niflos, to talk about the miracles and wonders she'iru lavosenu, that happened to our forefathers on the 15th of Nisan in Mitzrayim. Not a word about the Exodus. The Rambam says shene'emar, because the verse says, and he quotes the verse that says, tell your children that this is the day you went out of Egypt. The Pasuk in the Torah says the mitzvah is to talk about going out of Egypt. The Rambam says the mitzvah is to talk about the miracles that occurred on this night. He doesn't even mention, never in Torah do we override the simple pshat in favor of something else. Never. You can add all you like mystically on all the levels, but you can never move away from the simple pshat. The Torah says talk about the Exodus. The Rambam says you talk about the miracles and wonders that occurred to our forefathers. What happened to the Exodus? If you look at 10 lines later, the Rambam says, and when you tell a child, he says, you tell a child about all the miracles and wonders. And if the child is very small, or very undeveloped intellectually, very, very small child, you say, we were slaves in Egypt, like this servant, and you grab one of the many servants you no doubt have walking around your home dressed in starched white uniforms, and you say, we were enslaved in service like this person, and Hashem freed us, He took us out of the slavery. Where do you actually talk about Exodus from slavery to freedom to a 3-year-old, a person intellectually deficient? That's where it belongs. But anybody more sophisticated than that, you don't even mention the Exodus, you just talk about miracles. Why? Obviously, the Jewish people's redemption, our essence is to exodus from the material into the spiritual. That's unique. Every other nation has a geopolitical story, right? They can tell you they were, the British, the Americans, they broke away from the British, they didn't like them. I'm not sure they didn't have any reason. But the point is they didn't like the English, and so they broke away. So they tell that story. South Africans will tell you how the Portuguese came to the country, and then they trekked. They didn't like the British. I'm sorry, it was the British again. But they didn't like the British, so they trekked away and they started their own country, right? That's a South African story. Every nation has a geopolitical reality that it talks about. That's not our point of the Jewish people. It's not relevant that we started in Egypt and went to Israel as a geographical. It's not even relevant that we enslaved and became freed on a political level. It's all fact, of course. But that's only the substrate for what we really became, which was a people born in the material and bursting out into the spiritual. And therefore, says the Rambam, the mitzvah of the night is to express spirituality. You talk about the miracles and wonders the whole night. The Maharal points out incredibly. The Maharal says that all you talk about on this night is things that break the order, things that break the Seder, and we have the chutzpah to call it a Seder. Call it a Seder. We begin by saying, okay, we're going to talk about a Seder. From 1 to 15, perfectly beseder. And we spend the whole night talking about only the things that break the Seder. Says the Maharal, that's our Seder. We live in a different plane. A Jew should feel, when the natural world is taking place, you should feel very uncomfortable. When things are going crazy, hail is falling with fire inside and water and blood at the same time, kol b'seder, it's fine. We feel great when the world is going crazy and miracles are revealing themselves. That's our Seder, right? And that is the mitzvah of this month. What your children should, let's talk practically, what your child should walk away from the Seder is not the story that we were once slaves in Egypt and we were freed. If he's 3 years old, that's what he gets. But if he's more than 3 years old, he should be so fired up with the story that we were locked into the natural world and we burst out into the spiritual, that we could not relate to Hashem directly and we relate to Hashem. That's the child should walk. Meforshim say that Gidon, the great prophet Gidon, the Shofet, Gidon, was once spoken to by a Malach. An angel appeared to him. It's an incredible story. The angel appears to Gidon, which is a scary event. I mean, an angel Hashem, people are just knocked out of there. As the angel appears to Gidon, he says to the angel, where are your signs and wonders? He challenges the angel. The angel appears to him, and Gidon's first words to the angel are, where are your signs and wonders? The Mefarshim say an incredible thing. It was the first day of Pesach, and the night before he'd sat at his father's table. And he's walked away from that experience totally buzzing with the experience of Hashem revealing himself in miracles. And the first time he sees a manifestation, where are your wonders? Where are your miracles? That's all he was, that's where his head was on the first day of Pesach, right? Nisan is Nisim, of course, it's Gematria Nisim. And that's the idea of moving from the world of inexpressible constraint in the material, bursting out of the Meitzar Yam, right? Egypt. And how do you do that? You burst out of the world that holds the 50th locked in, and you count 49 days, walking through the desert, Medaber, the Midbar, the place where there's no Dibur, to get to the place of Dibur of Torah at Sinai. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu could speak after the Torah was given. Because we reached a level where the spiritual can be. What does it mean Hashem came down on the mountain? When you're 6 years old, it means a man in the sky with a white beard, appeared on the... Hashem appearing on the mountain means that the infinite manifested in the finite. There was some kind of connection between the infinite world and the finite world. And the Maharal says it means that the infinity of Hashem's wisdom was put into a finite thing called the Torah. That's unbelievably impossible. That infinite wisdom can be put into a finite book called the Torah. That's impossible, but it happened. After that, Moshe could speak. After the infinite can be expressed in the finite, then Moshe Rabbeinu could speak Torah. Until then, it's impossible. No human being can reach into the spiritual. You can't do that. But when that manifests in the world, there's a very incredibly beautiful example of this. Exquisitely beautiful. On Shabbos morning, Shabbos and Yom Tov, we say Nishmas Kol Chai. Right? Nishmat Kol Chai. It's a prayer that's only said on Shabbos and Yom Tov. In fact, it's essential. If you come late, which I know you would never do, but if you do come late and you skip things, you can't skip Nishmas, right? And in Nishmas is the most amazing statement. We say, Ilu Filu Malei Shira. If our mouths were full of song, and we had the power of the waves at our disposal, and our arms were outstretched like eagle's wings, and we had the power of the heavens and the cosmic, the expanse of the heavens. Are we talking about if our bodies, our limbs and organs, our tongues and our feet and our hands had the power of the whole universe? Ein anachnu maspikim, and we try to use those organs to speak Hashem of your praise. Ein anachnu maspikim, we wouldn't manage to say a proportion of your praise. Al achas me elef alfe alofe rive. We wouldn't manage a millionth of a zillionth of a trillionth of a, etc. of your praise, which is logical. Even if you had the whole universe at your disposal, there's no way you could talk about Hashem, which is infinite. The problem is 3 lines later we say Alkain. Listen to this is unbelievable. 3 lines later we say Alkain evarim shipilag tabanu. The limbs and organs that you gave us, hein yoidu v'varuchu v'shabchu. They will praise and sing your praises and talk about. Excuse me. 3 lines before you just said it's impossible. Listen to what a Jew is saying. Say Hashem, if our organs and limbs were the size of the universe, we wouldn't manage the trillionth, zillionth, billionth of your praises. Completely, utterly impossible. 3 lines later, Alkain, therefore, using these limbs and organs that I just spoke about, hen hem yoidu v'varuchu, they will do the job. Yeah, you just said it's impossible, and now you say there's no problem. Well, what is going on? So the usual answer that's given, the Balei Musa say, I think Rav Gifter said this also, they say, that's exactly Judaism. It's impossible. Who cares? We'll do it anyway. Yeah, it's impossible. Yeah, it doesn't bother us. We'll do it anyway. Right? The Balei Musa say, ask not if a thing is possible. Ask only if it's necessary. Your problem is not whether a thing's possible. That's his problem. Your problem is it's necessary. If it's necessary, do it. Possible, impossible, that's not your problem. That's his problem. He'll take care of that. If it's necessary, do it. Right? I once asked Rav Moshe Shapiro, I was writing a book and I wanted to put that line in and I wanted to quote it accurately. So I said to him, which of the Balei Musa said that? I want to quote it. He said that they all said it. You can quote any of them. He said, it's okay, you can give any names. They all said it. So that's the thing. That's the usual answer. But Rav Moshe Shapiro's answer is something unbelievably beautiful. That's true, of course, that answer, but here's something exquisitely beautiful. He said it means this. Nishmat Kol Chai is the tefillah of the Neshama Yetera. Nishmas Kol Chai is the tefillah of the Neshama Yetera, the extra soul you get on Shabbos. And there's proof for it. And by the way, the proof is in Arvei Pesachim. If you look in the Gemara in Arvei Pesachim, there the Gemara talks about which days do you get a Neshama Yetera and which ones you don't. right? So I can't go into the proof now. But nevertheless, Nishmas Kol Chai, it's the unique prayer. That's why you have to say it on Shabbos. You can't skip this. On Shabbat, you get an extra soul. Extra soul, Neshama Yetera, more soul. Neshama Yetera doesn't mean you get another soul. You don't become schizoid on Shabbos. Right? People think you have to eat on Shabbos because you got to feed the other one as well. That's not right. You have to eat more on Shabbos because you get more soul. Rashi says the Neshama Yetera means you can eat more and not feel full. Neshama Yetera means the soul goes into the body more. Neshama Yetera doesn't mean you get another soul. It means Yeter. It means the soul comes more into the body. Why on Shabbos are you eating more than other days? Rashi says the Neshama Yisera means you can eat more and not feel earthy and heavy. Eat more. It doesn't say you can learn more. Neshama Yisera means that the spirit can invest the body more. That's Kedusha in Judaism. What is Shabbos? Me'en olam haba. What will be in olam haba? Tchias hamesim, where body and soul will be put together. Shabbos is more body and soul being put together. And here's the answer. Under normal circumstances, the limbs and organs that you gave us could never reach into the spiritual world. Not a billionth of a zillionth of a trillionth. But on Shabbos, when the neshama, when that neshama comes into the body more, these organs, right, illuminated by the neshama, they can do the job, no problem. That's why, beautiful. And therefore, Egypt is a place where this cannot take place. And so Exodus is a place you are bursting out into the world where you can march through a desert which is battering speech, right? Mid-daber, it's a place where there's no speaking at all. You've come out of Egypt, you go through the ordeal of conquering that silent dimension, and you reach Sinai, which is Dibur Hashem. You can actually hear no less than the speech of Hashem itself. Let's just add one more dimension. I mean, this is clear now. Once you see it, it's obvious, no? Isn't it? Yes? No? Yes? They're so English. Let's just take one more. How do we do this? How do we do this? One way to do this, one way to develop this dimension and live this fully, one way, amazingly, is by practicing silence. Let me try to explain. You see, the danger of speaking is that you can reduce everything only to the spoken. Yeah, again, when it's locked in spiritually, you're tormented because you can't express it. The trouble is when you express it, if you get an excess of speaking, and you talk nonsense, you bring things out without being connected to the depth, then you're in real trouble. So here's what's needed. What's needed is a cultivation of silence. That means, and here's the message for today, you need a cultivation of silence. That means deep within the personality has to be a well of depth that reaches way beyond what can be expressed, and then bring that out into the world only the amount that can be expressed without killing where it came from. Let me try to explain. Obviously, this is impossible to explain because we're talking about silence and we're using words, right? Obviously. But let's try with the clumsy words to see if we can reach beyond the words. The obligation is to have a wellspring in your personality. You should know things at a level that is far beyond what can be expressed. You have to know them as they are. And then you are able to express them in the world only as much as they can be expressed in the world without killing the depth. Let me try to express this in a few ways. You will notice that I'll give you a few examples. Let's begin with Moshe Rabbeinu's speech. Why could he not speak properly? Why could he not speak normally? So the Ran says, here's a practical reason. The Ran says that this perfect human being could not speak because Hashem wanted the world to see. And ironically, the person with a message, the most potent and important message in all of human history, couldn't say it. He was a prophet. Prophet means the one who says a message. Niv, Nevu'ah, Navi, Niv Sfatayim. The prophet is the one whose job it is to speak in the world. And this greatest of all prophets couldn't speak. He had to say it to his brother, who would then say it over. Great, great irony. And the Ran says the reason that he couldn't speak properly was because Hashem didn't want anybody to ever have the faintest suggestion that he was just a good orator. Because good speakers can sway people, right? A good speaker can sway people. A good speaker doesn't have to have much content. A good speaker can make anything fascinating. He can make any subject. Yeah. My mother, who was a very insightful person, she once told me, watch out for people who are slick speakers. As a person, a slick speaker, he can talk about anything and convince you about anything, right? And throughout history, people have been incredible orators. They whip people up, and they can motivate a whole nation by the power of their speech. right? Great speakers. And sometimes, of course, it's been a salvation in history, and sometimes, of course, it's been a cause of millions of deaths. Hashem wanted a leader could never be accused of being somebody who was just a good spokesman. He was just an incredible, he had such a power of dibur that he could take people along with him, right? And therefore, the person for whom it was most important in all of history to speak was a person who couldn't speak. In other words, there was a total assurance here that what speaks in the case of Moshe Rabbeinu is the message and not the messenger. Right? That's it. That's what he says. But there's something much, much deeper here. Much, much deeper. And that's what the Maharal explains. And I'm trying to say it as clearly as I can. The Maharal says the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't speak was because of his perfection. Because he was living in a world where things are beyond speech. He was living in a world where all things are connected to all things. Where everything is known as it's known, not because of the words. The words are always finite, limited packages. Right? No matter how many words and how articulately and how beautifully you speak, you can never say the thing itself. You can only say enough of the thing in a crude, practical way that people get what you mean, but you can't say the thing. You can never just try to put a beautiful sunset into words. It's completely impossible. I'm not talking about technical things. Technical, mathematical, engineering, practical, you can put perfectly into words. In fact, in that division of human wisdom, if you can't express it, you didn't understand it. When something is logical, mathematical, engineering, practical, it can perfectly be put into words. And if it can't be, you didn't understand it. There's no problem there. I'm talking about the deeper world, the consciousness of things, the appreciation of existence and of beauty. All the important inner things can never be put into words. Never. People live together for 50 years. Then they begin to realize they never understood what the other person was saying from the beginning 50 years ago. That's men. I'm talking about men. Women know what their husbands mean despite what they say. But it's not the words. Right? Here's the rule. The more you have to speak to somebody, the less chance you have of being understood. The more words you need, the less chance you have of communicating. If two people know each other extremely well, a half a word is enough to understand each other perfectly. But when you've got to start explaining, listen to a husband explaining to his wife why he's actually right. Listen to me explaining. He's making it worse and worse and worse. He shouldn't have started. Right? That is you can't put those things into words. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't speak because he was living in a world where things are as they are. I couldn't put those into words. Any putting to words was limiting it to this finite dimension. After the Torah was given, he spoke normally. Because the Torah's giving was the miracle of infinite wisdom in finite words, then he could speak. But that's not natural, he couldn't do that. Let's take another example. Kabbalah, I'm supposed to speak about Kabbalah. Kabbalah in Hebrew is called Sod. Sod, the secret wisdom. So people who don't think about this have an idea that Sod means a secret. No one told you. Why is it called a Sod? No one told you. One day you'll be walking in the old city of Yerushalayim, and a hand will reach out from an alley and pull you in, and an old man with a long white beard will tell you all the secrets, and then you'll know the Kabbalah. Right? But you see, that's wrong completely. In Torah, we never name a thing incidentally. Incidentally means it's a secret because you don't happen to know. For the person who knows, it's not a secret. No. It's called Sod because it's always secret. It can never be put into words. It's called Sod because no one could ever say it into words. It's understood in the mind. Kabbalah is something that's understood that can't be put into words. That's why the Mishnah says when the Rabbi teaches the Talmud, the master teaches the disciple, he's not allowed to say it to him. He's only allowed to say what's called Roshei Prakim. That means, how does a Kabbalist teach his student? He's not allowed to teach him the material. He has to teach him only the concepts, and then the student has to get it himself. Is some sort of a game? No, this is wisdom that can't be put into words. The Rebbe's job is to push the student close enough with these words till he falls in. Once you fall in, you think, what are you doing so much talking for? Again, how do you tell somebody how to ride a bicycle? No amount of words will do it. No amount of words. You can't put into words what it means to balance on a bicycle. You can say enough words that the guy will sort of try until he finally gets it. Once he's got it, you think, what took you so long to explain? Things that are inner meaning can't be put into words. And therefore, Kabbalah is called a Sod because it's always secret. No matter how much you know, you can never put it into words. I'll give you another example. People who lived through the European destruction, right? Many, many elderly people who went through that. The families will tell you they never spoke about it ever. They never ever spoke about it. My grandmother, she went through this thing year after year. She would never ever speak about it at all. Young people misunderstand that very badly. Young people think that those people didn't speak about it because it's too painful. It was too painful, they didn't want to speak about it. That's not the reason. The reason they didn't speak about it was not because it was too painful. It's because they couldn't. Those couldn't be put into words. How do you take an experience of such inhuman dimensions? You couldn't even put into words the meaning of one child tortured to death for no reason other than the fact that he happens to be Jewish. Millions of people. There's no word. Where do you start? They didn't talk about it not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't. And by the way, if you're a therapist, in therapy, the therapy is to get the person to talk. Because when somebody's bearing a pain that is too large for their own experience, and the pain is unbearable, once they start speaking, they reduce it to a package of speech. And once the words come out, they start pouring out. And once the person gets it out, and they put it into a finite dimension, it gives it a bearable element, because it's now been... But let me finish with this. I have to finish soon. Let me finish with this. You see, too much speaking. Let me finish with this. The work here is to keep it silent, because as soon as you speak, you risk bringing it down to that finite level, and you risk losing. Simcha Zissel, one of the great Balei Musa, wrote in a letter to his son. Unbelievable thing. He wrote a letter to his son, and he said, "I'm going to reveal to you a Torah idea. I've never shared this with anybody for 25 years. I heard it from Rabbi Salanta 25 years ago, and I've never told anyone, because I was worried that if I would say it, I would lose it." Do you understand? It was part of me living at a dimension beyond words, and I was worried that if I said it too soon, I hear it and I spit it out, and then I lose it. As soon as you put it into the package of words, you reduce it to that. I wanted to be sure that it had become part of me, and I waited 25 years. Now I'm going to tell you. You see, most of us, as soon as we hear something, the natural instinct is, I've got to tell today. That's before you've even, while you're hearing it, you're already forwarding to somebody else. And, that is disastrous. Disastrous. Just one moment, just 1 second. Let it seep in. Something beautiful and meaningful. Let it become part of you. If you spit it out immediately, this is a teacher's dilemma. People like myself, right? I have to admit it. The more beautiful a Torah idea is that I hear, then, I'm going to put this into a shir. I'm going to say this over. No. Control. It should become part of you. The more you spit it out, the less you have of it. Let me finish with this. When Michal saw David dancing in the street, right? She saw him dancing. It says she accused him. She said to him that you have been, right? In the eyes of your maidservants, you exposed yourself. They saw you dancing in the street. He was dancing in front of the Aron in honor of Hashem, and it says Vativa, she despised him. She saw the king of Israel dancing in the street, and everybody could see his ankles and his knees. And she accused him of very, very powerful accusations. She said, you revealed yourself ke'echad harekim, like one of the empty fellows. Wow, imagine saying that to King David. Right? And when David heard that criticism, he said to Nakalosi oid mizos, I will belittle myself even more than this for Hashem's honor. Right? You think that's, I will go even further, and in the same eyes of the same maidservants you spoke about, I'll reveal even more in Hashem's honor. And then it goes on to say that she died in childbirth. She never had a child till the time she died because of criticism of David. So Rav Moshe Shapiro said he once heard a chassid in Tel Aviv many, many years ago explain this in a beautiful way, and I'll finish with this. What's even more incredible is Rav Moshe heard this when he was 11 years old. 11 years old, he heard this explanation, and he must have understood it at some level, because he said what Michal was criticizing about David was not that you could see his ankles. That wasn't the problem. She was criticizing the fact that you could see his neshama. His dance was such an expression of his neshama that you could see everything. And her accusation was, you are never allowed to reveal all that you have within. If you reveal it all, you've left yourself empty. If you meet a friend and you sit down with him for the first time, you're getting to know someone, you sit down for a cup of coffee, and in 20 minutes you tell them all about yourself. That's all you are, 20 minutes of talk. A real friendship is you get to know someone. The more you get to know them, the more you realize how much more undiscovered there is. A person has to be a wellspring of infinite resource and infinite depth. The more you say, a teacher should be saying only the little tip of the iceberg of what he actually knows. Right? There has to be, everything you reveal in the world has to be informed by a depth that is far more than can be expressed. Far more than can be expressed. She accused him. She said that dance was so incredibly expressive that we saw to the depth of your neshama, and that's unforgivable. When you express all that you are, no more is left in the well, right? You've limited yourself to the finite. You've broken your connection with the infinite. And David said to Nakalosi, you think that's all there is? You think that's all? I haven't forgotten. You have no idea how much more lies within that was not revealed, right? It could be that she died in childbirth, because that's exactly the point. She emptied herself of life when she expressed herself in life. Could be, I don't know. Anyway, let's just wrap it up. We said that Pesach is the time of talking. It's the tikkun. It's the exile, the redemption of speech. Galus hadibur. It is the time where we learn to speak, and of course, we are learning to speak correctly, not just talking nonsense. But every word is informed from silence. The Mishnah says there's nothing better than silence, and therefore every word that comes out should be an expression, a beautiful, measured expression of something that goes far beyond words. Thank you.